Welcome to Comics Culture. I'm your host, Aaron Varnam. Today, we will be getting to know a great mind in comic book criticism. His wit, faster than a speeding bullet. His love for Batman is more powerful than a locomotive, and he's a big wrestling fan. Chris Sims, senior writer at ComicsAlliance, one of the AOL Corporation's comic book blogs and one of the more popular comic book blogs on all the internet.
That's right. We tend to go back and forth with comic book resources for the #1 spot, but we have a completely different audience. They're more news focused. They do a lot of press releases, a lot of announcements. We do a lot of humor, commentary, stuff like that. So that's what I focus on.
So growing up, I know I've read back in the past that you have always been into comic books, and I believe you wrote a review back in like 8th grade or something about a leaf field comic book. So what made you decide to go into comic books as a career?
I'd always wanted to be a writer. Like when I was 12, my dad gave me a copy of a Dave Barry book. If you're familiar with Dave Barry at all, and they were just, it was a book of his columns that are just short, funny essays about stuff. And at the age of 12, that's what I wanted to do. Like I read that and I said, this is it. This is what I want to do for a living. And fortunately, I'm pretty okay at it. As for why it started in comics. I originally did a column in my high school newspaper, and one of my columns got rejected for being too hot for high school
like
news.
Too racy?
It was a column about, I'm from South Carolina, and if you remember back in the 90s, there was a big controversy about the Confederate flag on top of the State House, and I wrote a column that was considered a little too provocative for small town South Carolina high school. So I actually started shopping it around when I was 17 to all these websites that I was interested in. There was one in particular that I'd found because, do you remember the show Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the sort of expatriates or alumni from that show were writing for this particular comedy, essay site. And so I just sent them an email because I was 17 and I didn't know any better than to just go, hey, do you guys want to publish this and pay me money? And it turns out they did. So I kind of got my first taste of writing professionally at 17, which was really cool. And for a long time, I was really worried that would be the peak of my career.
Right.
That was like, the nerd equivalent of being the athlete who peaks in high school. Is that like, yeah, I got my Confederate flag column published. They actually didn't publish that one because they had just done a similar piece. But I got started in that, and then the .com bubble burst. So they ended up owing a lot of people a lot of money, me included. But I didn't write for a long time after that, but I was always into comics. So, I did what a lot of people do is I got a job at a comic book store, and I would just...
Right, that's the natural progression.
Right, and in fact, it's a lot like, the film directors of the 90s and 2000s who came up working at video stores. If you ask around, there's a lot of people in comics who used to work in comic book stores because people in comics want to be around that stuff, and that's the best way to do it. You get to stand around reading comics all day. Like, Matt Fraction worked at a store in Charlotte. Cullen Bunn used to work in a comic book store. Laura Hudson, who was the original editor of ComicsAlliance, who just left the site this summer. She worked at a couple. She worked at Midtown in New York. Joe Hughes, who's the current editor of ComicsAlliance, he worked at Midtown in New York. So the people who would come into the store, I had friends who were customers, and they really encouraged me to start writing about it. So I started a blog in 2005, and because I was just surrounded by comics all day, and I would read them and then think about them all night, that's just kind of what I fell into. I just fell into writing about comics, and then I fell into sort of writing comics.
Did you have any special schooling or anything? Did you go to school for English or journalism?
I'm a college dropout.
Oh, well, that's very successful, though.
Yeah, but I did. I studied. I was majoring in English. I went to USC for 3 years, and then it was just it was probably, I'm sure, a very common story. My scholarship money ran out, and I just couldn't continue, and I kind of had to choose between, getting a job that would allow me to financially support myself through college, or working at a comic book store, and being around this thing that I love. So I made that decision. I still don't know if it's the right one. But it certainly allowed me to be around this thing I love and to work in this industry that I love. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone, but that's sort of my path.
Well, you've been able to travel the United States. You've been able to go around. You meet some of your heroes.
That's right.
you started a close bond with Jonathan Hickman, who lives close to here.
Yeah, he lives. He's a South Carolina guy. He lives down in Florence.
So I mean,
It's funny. The big Avengers movie came out this year, and now the guys who are writing Avengers now, or the guys who are creating Avengers, it's Jonathan Hickman from Florence and Steve Epting from Columbia.
There goes
You lost the stinger.
Sting.
Oh no!
Kind of like his career in after 2000.
Land down in TNA.
Right.
But yeah, like a lot of people don't realize this because that sort of comics up from the 30s to like the 70s are very New York based, and then you would get guys that came up from like Mark Waid's from Birmingham, Alabama, which I didn't realize.
That's so weird
He
to me.
has no accent. Yeah. Oh, there he goes again.
We're just gonna put Sting right here.
You want me to hold Sting?
Yeah, just hold him up.
Me and the Stinger. We were.
I follow him on Facebook. He has the worst grammar I have ever out of anybody that I've seen on Facebook, and I've got like friends that are not very bright, and then I look at his stuff, and it's like everything is a typo, and his grammar is terrible.
All that face paint gets to you.
Come on, man, all that lead probably.
But yeah, since comics have kind of gotten to the point where, you can write from anywhere. Like I write for, I was just up in New York last weekend for New York Comic Con, and I went by the AOL offices, but that's the third time I've been there, and I've been working for ComicsAlliance for 3 years, and I write from South Carolina. So now you're getting a lot of people who are from different places, and it's funny to see how many people are from the South, like how many people have that Southern upbringing. Chad and I, Chad Bowers is my co-writer on our book that we just announced at New York. We set part of it in Columbia. We wrote a story that we set in
the only comic book ever set in Columbia.
I asked Hickman if the Avengers were going to relocate down to Florence. I think that would be fun, but that's obviously not going to happen.
It'd be a lot different scenarios. I don't think there'd be any supervillains.
Yeah,
down in
I really want him to take on Maurice's barbecue. I really want him. I want that barbecue, and I want that racist barbecue manufacturer out of there. But I think that's a job for the Avengers. But I don't think the other 99% of the country would agree with me on that.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, I'm part of the 1%.
There you go.
That's right.
The 1%.
Yeah.
Okay. It's getting political.
Right.
But yeah, it's been really fun, and it's been fun to see that kind of southern. That kind of southern comics writing attitude come up. And
it's neat. I saw, what was it? They were doing, and it kind of weirded me out. I was reading Marv Wolfman's Night Force. They came out with a new one.
Right.
And it was terrible, but that was set in it was like Hilton Head, I think.
Was it really?
Yeah, like the first issue. I'm
awesome.
like, Hilton Head, South Carolina. Why would you have that in Hilton Head? And you just see like more of the South kind of permeating into these comic books. And you have to think, with the internet the way it is and kind of connecting everybody, that these other people are finally getting a chance at kind of showing what they've got.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because with the Marvel books, you're pretty much tied to New York.
Yeah.
Because that's where all those characters live. And actually, that's a funny story too, because I grew up reading Marvel comics, reading Frank Miller Daredevil and Punisher in the 90s, and watching movies like The Warriors. So when I went to New York, and again, this last weekend, I've been to New York 3 times, and this last weekend was the only time that I've ever been off of like lower Midtown Manhattan.
So like the tourist route.
Yeah, and I was shocked that it was not exactly like it is in The Warriors.
Hell's Kitchen doesn't have an obese man running all the crime?
There's no magic giant pagoda in the middle of Clinton. But no, it was I was just surprised. Like, oh, it's actually very nice here. People are very pleasant. There's no ninjas. There's nobody's walking around in suspenders and no jacket, just doing cocaine on the street.
And Stiltman, not
yeah, exactly. Like movies and TV.
Suspiciously absent from the crime in the area.
Right, but a lot of times you will see guys like when Mark Waid did Impulse, he made up the DC Universe fictional town of Manchester, Alabama, for Impulse to grow up in. And now that you're seeing like the rise of a lot of very comic-centric towns. Portland, Oregon is probably the number one. Like Brian Bendis, Matt Fraction, Chris Robertson, and Allison Baker live up there. Paul Tobin, Colleen Coover. Like there was a studio up there that was responsible for like half of Marvel Comics at one point. So you get a lot of weird comics being set in Portland now. Stumptown and Brian Bendis did that book Scarlet that was set out there. So that's it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see like how that affects the way things go around.
Now, do you think it's kind of weird to see that like with the Southern culture and the kind of stigma associated with like a slower pace of life, and then you see somebody like Jonathan Hickman have some of the most mind-blowing ideas and some of the most intricate plot lines that you've seen in a while? Does that kind of shock the comic industry a little bit?
I don't know. I'd like to think so because I think that would give me more credibility as a comics writer. But I think I do think there is something to that, like that we do have a different way of thinking. That like every region has its own different way of thinking. In the past year, I've been all over, and I've just been amazed at how, and it sounds so dumb and provincial, but I've been amazed at how different other parts of the country are. Like people
You sound like a true Southerner.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all, they don't. Funny quick story. I was out in Los Angeles a few months ago, and whenever I go someplace, I always eat when I'm in another part of the country, and I try to eat
that's part of the culture.
Their local specialties.
The comics culture, that is.
Yes, comics culture does love to eat. That is a fact. But I always like to look at their menu to see what their idea of Southern food is, because
it's always fried chicken.
Yeah, the first 2 times I went to New York, I ended up going to like this like Southern country cooking restaurant in Times Square, which was delicious, but I thought it was hilarious that I went that far north. And I had barbecue the second time, which is a big thing with me. But out in Los Angeles, I was at this restaurant, and they had Southern style chicken on the menu, and it was skinless and grilled. And I was like, y'all, come on. That is not how we do it. That's not how we do it at all.
Oh my God. I mean, there's all these like stereotypes of our area, but it's cool to see that this area is finally getting some recognition.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one of those things that was the same as it always was. Like you would have guys.
Same as it ever was.
Yeah.
Just like David Byrne said.
Exactly.
Right?
Same as it ever was. But instead of having guys that go up to New York and become New Yorkers and live there and write stories about New York, you have guys that go to New York to meet up with people and then come home, or to South Carolina or Portland, or Jeff Parker is another North Carolina guy,
right,
who is just full of bursting with these ideas to get out into comics that don't necessarily reflect the South, but they are these big, great ideas that he's had since he was a kid growing up in.
Well, let's hold that thought for a second. We're about to take a break. When we come back, we are going to have some talk about professional wrestling, which is my forte.
Let's do it.
And we can talk about some of your likes and dislikes in the comic books. I know you hate Jeff Loeb, so we'll be right back.
To my sister, who always supported me. To my nieces and nephews, who always greeted me with a hug. To my best friend, who always made me laugh. To anyone who always thought I would do so much with my life. I'm sorry that I never let you see how broken I was.
The Constitution of the United States defines our great nation.
Our founding fathers created the Bill of Rights to amend the original Constitution and to ensure that it would always be a living document for the American people.
The First Amendment may be the best known and the most powerful amendment in the Bill of Rights.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof,
or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press,
or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
The Bill of Rights is reflected in the thoughts and acts of Americans and remains symbols of power that can move the world. power is our faith and human liberty.
Join us next time to learn about the Second Amendment.
Welcome back. I was looking at the notes. I got caught looking at the notes. Some of the things that I want to talk about. Terrence Dollar, the guy who's helping run this show, we both have a distinct love for the new Scott Snyder run of Batman, and you're a huge Batman fan. Even from like the Detective Comics that he did a few, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, where he had Dick Grayson as Batman.
Right.
How do you feel that he's taken on that character in like compared to runs like Grant Morrison's run or Frank Miller's run?
A lot of people did not react well to Scott Snyder on Batman, who really loved it on Detective because it's so different. But I loved it.
God, it was amazing.
Yeah, and the reason I loved it was because traditionally, the idea behind the 2 major monthly Batman books, and now there's like 5, so it doesn't hold up as
Only
as
2
much
of
as
them
it did.
are worth of crap.
Yeah, there's Detective Comics and Batman. Those are the long running ones, the ones that go back to 39 and 40. Detective Comics is what it says. It's a detective story. Batman is what it says. It's a superhero story. So on Detective Comics, Scott Snyder told a very detective story. It was focused on Jim Gordon and Dick Grayson kind of figuring it out. There was a murder mystery. It was a weird superhero murder mystery, but it was, a mystery.
Oh, there was twists and turns. It was
Right.
very...
There were clues, but there were also, guys with robot legs running over cars, and he had to figure out how this whale got into this office building. And then, so, he tells a very focused, dark mystery story that needs to be solved. Then, they do the relaunch, they move him over to Batman, and he tells a very big superhero story. Like, that is a story. He goes from a story where, Batman is investigating a murder to a story where Batman is fighting this, crazy immortal clone army in the Batcave with this giant robot dinosaur stomping on him, and he's got an evil twin brother. Like, that
Which they haven't confirmed yet. They don't. You don't.
You never know if he's really, or if he's, which I love. I love Thomas Wayne. I think he's great, but I love Thomas Wayne Jr. Right. But I just love that. I love that he brings in all the superhero stuff, and that it's such a clear departure from what he was doing before. It is a big, weird superhero book, which I think Batman should be. I think I have a friend, Jay Pinkerton, who was actually one of the first guys after my high school career to bring me in to write professionally. He was an editor at Cracked, who brought me in when I was writing for Cracked, and he hates it. He only likes Batman as almost a pulp character, as a detective in a costume. That's the only Batman.
So like the
likes.
original, like 1930s.
Well, not even, because the original Batman was just as weird. But he likes the very Frank Miller Year One style stories,
right?
Which is fine. I like those too.
Yeah.
But I also like Batman who does live in the same universe as Superman and is a member of the Justice League and does fight, supervillains. So I like to see. That's the thing I really love about Batman, is how adaptable he is. You can have funny Batman, you can have serious Batman, you can have superhero Batman, you can have, Batman Beyond. They're all very valid takes on the character because the core of it is so adaptable. So I loved that Scott Snyder run. I thought it was, I'm glad it's still going on. And Greg Capullo I thought was a great surprise on art.
I didn't really think I was going to like him at first, and then I kind of saw like the first issue, and there was a lot going on, and then I've really, I can't imagine it without him now.
Yeah, and he's the only guy who made it that full year without missing an issue. Snyder and Capullo were the only team who did all 12 issues of their book. Right. And again, I have never read an issue of Spawn in my life, even though I was 15 in 1997. Right. So seeing, when he came on, I was like, oh, it's just some Spawn guy. But he turned out to be perfect. He's got that great kind of exaggerated cartooniness to his art that fits the kind of exaggerated cartooniness of the story.
But it's still dark, though.
Oh, it's very dark, but it's dark in a weird way. It's
right.
more weird than anything else.
Right.
And I'm reading that going, yes, more weirdness.
So this is something that I've been discussing with Terrence, and he asked me to put this into it. My favorite run of a Justice League comic.
Right.
Is Justice League International. I really like the...
That's a solid choice.
Well, the funny take and everything, and I love the relationship between Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. That's one of my favorite things in the world is reading that. His favorite run is Justice League Detroit.
Well, he's objectively wrong. Sorry, you are wrong.
So, in a fight between these two, who would win?
I think that's Jail International. No question.
How easy is that?
I will say though, my favorite Justice League International story is a direct sequel to a Justice League Detroit story.
Really?
There's this. It's probably the best, probably the only well-known Justice League Detroit story. It's the one where Despero comes to Earth, and it's the first time you kind of see the big kind of hulked out Despero, and he just beats the crap out of Justice League Detroit, and they have to, for 4 issues. And it's their first time. It's the one story where they're like, oh right, these guys are kind of terrible.
So then they go to the International, and the International just...
Well, no, and then he shows back up, and he comes back to Earth in the Justice League International run, and it's a sequel to that story, and he beats up the Justice League International too. But he kills Mr. Miracle in that story. But
who cares about Mr. Miracle?
It's just a Mr. Miracle robot. Spoiler warning for a comic that came out in 1988.
Right.
But yes, but they're both really great stories.
They're very different. In your opinion, is Suicide Squad issue number 10 with Amanda Waller poking Batman in the chest, is that the greatest cover of all time?
That is a good comic. I don't know if it's the greatest cover of all
Man,
time.
I think it is.
It's up there. It's probably top 5.
That's such a good
It's
comic.
probably 4 Kirby comics, and then that is number 5.
Well, Kirby.
Hold up now.
All right, so now let's go to professional wrestling.
Let's do it.
Because there is a lot of crossover between wrestling fans and comic book fans.
Yeah, I mean,
We're both nerds.
I got into them about the same time, and I focus on them the same way.
Well, there's a lot of transfer of superheroes. Like you see Hulk Hogan, well, not Hulk Hogan now, if you've heard anything recently, but they're like almost to God status. And then you see the comic book characters. There's a lot of character development that kind of intertwines between the two.
Yeah, I've written about pro wrestling a lot, and like I said, I like to focus on them the same way. And I think in a lot of ways they're very similar in their aesthetic. Like, you can watch a pro wrestling match, and even if it's 2 guys you don't care about, if they're good in the ring, they can make you enjoy that match,
right?
Because you're enjoying what you see. It's the same thing with comics. Like, even if the script isn't quite up to par, if you're reading a comic that has like Art Adams or Ed McGuinness or even Kirby, one of those great artists, they can save that comic. They can save the poor scripting, whereas if you don't have that, no matter how much you care about, let's see, Hulk Hogan, like to use an example, like Hulk Hogan was never that great in the ring. He was very charismatic.
Terrible.
But as he got older and that kind of charisma wore off and was replaced by the charisma, like a different kind of charisma that you got with guys like Steve Austin.
He does have
and
a different kind of charisma now, if you know what I mean.
But oh dear. But like those his particular skill set couldn't save him once the bloom was off the rose of that charisma.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons, like, I watch WWE with a very critical eye, and that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it, but I mean that I think about it in terms of how are they trying to tell this story? What are the effective ways that they're telling the story? And that's often really frustrating for me, that they, Sheamus as a wrestler is a guy that I like. Like, he goes like a freight train in the ring.
Didn't you say you met, or was that Brandon?
No, I met. We both did. Like,
they said he's like
together.
the nicest guy.
Yeah, Sheamus is one of the nicest dudes I've ever met. Brandon Stroud was complaining about that 18-second match at WrestleMania, and Sheamus said that he loved that match because he got to leave the show early and take his dad out for a drink that he'd flown over from Ireland.
That's
and it's
awesome.
Like, that makes you completely forget that he buried
destroyed
Daniel
your
Bryan,
favorite wrestler
right.
of all time.
But then his character, when he gets in the ring, great look. He works. You can see him working hard to improve. He doesn't let himself get stale. He's having some great big brawly matches.
With Wade Barrett last week was actually a lot of fun.
But his character seems to have no motivation other than over the past few weeks, I want to fight Mexicans. And then,
he's racist now.
He's insanely racist. And then now the story they're telling
from South Carolina, right?
that's me talking from South Carolina. But now they're framing this feud with Wade Barrett as England versus Ireland, which is historically has not been a source of fun.
Right.
That is not a fun time to happen. So it's tough. Whereas CM Punk is a guy who I really enjoy watching in the ring, and I also completely understand his motivation. His motivation is very clear and it makes sense. And so even when he's a bad guy, he's very easy to identify with because his motivation is clear. Nobody else's motivation is as clear as he is. I was thinking about it the other day, and Eve Torres, the Divas champion, I can describe her character and her character's motivation better than I can with Sheamus.
That's sad.
Yeah, which
And they give him like the time on screen is just astronomically, shifted towards Sheamus as opposed to Eve, who's only on screen for like a minute every episode.
And that's not a knock on Eve Torres. Like
No.
I want all of them to have characters that I identify with. I want all of them to have storylines that make me care, but they don't, unfortunately. And that's one of the things that I really liked about Chikara, which is an independent promotion that I'm a big fan of, that I went up to Easton.
Yeah, they're out of Chicago?
They are based in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
And I think that's, Easton.
They have a lot more comedy, and it's interesting, right?
There's a lot more comedy. There's a lot more masked wrestlers. They do a very, it's been described as cartoony, and I don't really think that's a bad thing. But they do, going into this big King of Trios event, everybody's motivation was very clear. Like all the stories that they told were very understandable, and I feel the same way about comics. If your character's motivation isn't clear, if you're just doing, a big punch-out fight comic, it doesn't mean anything. Like no matter how good the art is, it's not going to resonate with a reader. And I love big punch-out fight comics, but I love them. Yeah, OMAC is a great comic, and you understand OMAC. Like that first issue of OMAC is a heartbreaker because he's, it is a comic about an 8-foot-tall dude who just destroys everything. There is nothing that actually challenges him in that comic. But it's also a comic about Buddy Blank, the guy who turns into OMAC, who is working this terrible job in this weird dystopian future that's a lot like now, who, he's very lonely and nobody cares about him. He's a blank. Like, Kirby is not subtle. And then the one girl who's nice to him, like the one person at his job who's nice to him, turns out to be this weird experiment that they were doing to see if this robot woman they made in the basement would be believable.
That sounds like all my love life.
Yeah, exactly. when he finds out that it's not real, that this one moment of affection that he felt wasn't real, that's when he flips out. That's when he becomes OMAC, and that's when he puts a stop to it.
OMActivate.
Yeah, he OMActivates.
And we're gonna have to deactivate here in a second. We have to close out. It's been a fantastic interview with you. I wish that we could have had an hour. I'm
not doing anything for the rest of the day.
Well, then while we're eating North Carolina style barbecue, we are going to be talking about more comics. Thank you for watching Comics Culture. I'm Aaron Varnam. For Chris Sims, maybe next time. Maybe they'll pick us up for a whole season. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.